Hello, my name is Thiago, and in this video, we're going to talk about dashboards. That is the cloud feature of the product. On the previous video, you had an overview how the vulnerability assessment works, authenticated, not authenticated. And today, we're going to talk about what happens after gathering all this data, all the vulnerabilities, after populate all your assets. And now you start to have an overview of your network, of your environment. So basically this option here, dashboard, is the one that we're gonna talk about. It is loading. Okay. So the default dashboard, usually they have more options in here. I just left this one for we have for make it easier for the video. So first thing that you need to understand is those built-in dashboards to make your life easy. So it's a way that Rapid7 InsightVM give you some overview of the vulnerabilities that you might have. But before you adding all the dashboards or the relevant, you need to double check in your company what is the risk prioritization that you're supposed to follow. So, for example, zero tolerance for exploitable vulnerabilities. We're going to prioritize the vulnerabilities that are severe, that are critical, that have a CVSS score of 9, 10. So it depends. But again, it's just a matter of double check, and those tools would help you to achieve the goal. So right now we don't have anything. I just left these. I like to have that just to give them an overview. So for example, in my environment, I have 14 assets. And how is my home? I don't have 14 computers at home, but I have IoT devices. I have Alexa devices. I have Apple TV, and all of them were found. And I have some groups. So the most important, even if you get the full dashboard with more dashboards in here, is to see what you need to make your life easy. So you go to this option in here, add card. On the add card options, you're gonna have in total 105 cards. I'm not gonna talk about all of them. As I said, you should see how you should filter, how you should prioritize the risks. Risk, I mean vulnerability, and you go from there. So I'm gonna just add few. So the full accounts, it's interesting to have. So the full accounts on a server, a workstation, and network device. They have those user admin, password admin, user admin, password. So those type of checks. Exploitable vulnerabilities. I would add, all of them. I have done a test already. I don't have exploitable vulnerabilities on my environment. It's just a test environment. So I can add one for we double check. I love those heat graphs in here. We're gonna see more. Let me go to the vulnerability itself and see what we can get from here. So upcoming, most common service. This is not a vulnerability, but all the services that InsightVM found on your environment. It's interesting because maybe you have lots of SMB version 1, HTTP that are weak protocols, and you just not even aware. Most common vulnerabilities on your environment. And we have those heat graphs that I mentioned to you previously. So vulnerability data, I'm gonna add all of them. Obviously, some of them are similar. Then you just need to go by the risk prioritization that your company is following. So I'm gonna add all of them. So now we start to have a little bit more data. I like to have this as my first dashboard. So let me just move up, and this is how you can pretty much organize your dashboards. So for example, here, my most common services, the RFC, I have HTTP on my Amazon Fire Stick. I have HTTPS. There are things that I didn't even know that I have. And this is important. It's the advantage. So if you have a project in your company to remove the weak protocols, or just to have even a better overview, this would be an easy way to get all the information. So those are the most common vulnerabilities. Again, I can just click and expand, then I can see all of them. It's easy for me because, as I said, my environment is just my home. Then I don't have much data. If you're talking about a production environment, a real company, so then just expand the cards. It's not feasible because I have too much data. You're gonna have lots of pages. Then you need to find the best way to get to prioritize and filter to take action. And this is what we are pretty much talking about. So vulnerability discovery date by CVSS score. So for example, let's imagine that the company you work, it's trying to prioritize by CVSS score. And this would be an easy way for you. So for example, you can see that you have from 7 to 10, 15 vulnerabilities that were found on the previous 29 days. So they are very recently. And 100% sure you should prioritize them. So you could just click in here, and those vulnerabilities will load, because as you can see here, it's the only one that are selected. So pretty much in here, I have all those vulnerabilities, the 15 ones that I should prioritize. And this is as easy as that, I wanted to see those 63 as well. Voila, here's all of them. So again, it's an easy way for you see what is your first action should be. For example, I do believe that the 7.0 to 10 would be more important than the 4.0 to 6.9, or even the 0.1 to 3.9. Let's go back. And as I said, all of them seem a little bit similar. So vulnerability discovery data by severity, vulnerability publish age by severity, vulnerability age by CVSS scores, pretty much almost like that. This is just the age of the vulnerability itself. So as you can see, if I can choose the way I would work, I rather work with those two. Let me try to put them beside each other. Vulnerability discovered data by CVSS score, and vulnerability. Okay, those two is the ones that I would work. It's the one that I prefer. Again, it's just a preference, a personal preference. I didn't add the full accounts. And this I just created a default account to have an example for you guys. So as you can see here, I have an asset with the default account. If I click expand the card, I can see where this vulnerability is. So it's pretty much on this machine. And I have in total 13 vulnerabilities on that. Obviously, all this data can export. I can create a remediation project. I'm gonna talk about then what are the advantages of that. And okay, so you say, okay, Thiago, I have 20,000 assets on my environment. Even if I use those, and obviously you have much more cards that would help you to refine all this data. For example, in here you have the most common vulnerabilities on your environment. I'm gonna delete those just for we keep simple for the example. So, but this is not helping me, because I'm seeing data that I don't need it to see. I'm an asset owner for Linux devices, server, or usually people use Linux as server. Then what can I do? In this case, we can use the dashboard query or the query builder in this. So let me click in here. Right now, we don't have it. We just have this one. So let's create one. So I'm gonna go up here, click. And these you can pretty much use the simple query language to query the information on your environment. So the example I gave is I am an asset owner for Linux devices. So I should see just data related to Linux device. So how do I know what is a Linux operational system? So I'm going to query for operating system. Asset information, OS, okay. So OS description contains Linux. Obviously, we'll have always multiple ways to do the same thing. Just keep that in mind. So as you can see in here, I have this that is my server. I have other devices that are Linux as well. And it will filter everything just regarding this query. So I can see all the vulnerabilities related to the assets that have OS description as Linux. You can just save, then you can give the name Linux, for example. And then you can just close. And if you go back to a dashboard and load the query, and if you have lots of queries in your environment, you can always just, filter by the ones that you have created yourself. Sometimes it's easy, or you just try to search by the name. So I'm going to click in here. So automatically, all the data in here changed in all those dashboards, and they will be just relevant for the Linux devices. So in here, I can see just the service running on the Linux devices. I can see the vulnerability discovery date by CVSS score, the discovery date by severity, and the most common vulnerability on those devices, and then go on. And even if I have a default account on any of those devices that I have. As I said, we have lots of dashboards, lots of related to vulnerabilities that could help you. So you just needed to play, and double check which one that would be relevant for your environment or for your daily work. I'm just working with very few examples for the video, don't be too long. And this is pretty much how you started to query things on your environment. So I can query anything related to sites Let me close that, go back to the query builder. And I don't remember. You don't need to memorize those. I can just see the categories and read them. So asset. So related to asset, I have asset average scan duration, last scan duration. So you have containers, you have asset information, then you can put a IPv4, IPv6, asset group if you use in your environment, and OS, OS type, OS family, OS vendor, so services, software, tags, vulnerability exploit, vulnerability information. You can use it by title, by CVID. So you have lots of ways to find the same type of information. For example, let's suppose that you want to remove Java vulnerabilities from your environment. How would you do that? So I'm gonna go for vulnerability. For title or description, let's try title contains Java, as generic as that. And again, I have 35 vulnerabilities that are related to Java. It's across all my assets. If I want, I could filter by OS, by site. So I'm just gonna save as well. Java, save. And I'm gonna go back to my dashboard. I'm gonna load this new Java, and voila. Then I can see here that 6 of them have the CVSS score 7.10. One is critical. I can see all the most common. So I could even add the assets. Let me see here. Asset, there is one that is asset with most with risk, if top risk asset location, top risk asset group, asset one, top risk is assets, add. So in here you can see the name of the top riskiest assets in this case. Again, this information wasn't much relevant for me on the just, query by the dashboards, but now for me, it's also interesting to quickly see what are the assets that have the Java vulnerability. Again, as I said, my environment is small, and it's much easier for me. Maybe for you, you would need to refine more those queries. So I can just refresh I can just click on the expand, and I can just export to CSV to see all those assets. So the same view in here would be in here. Let's just double check. And here we have lots of info. So workstation, VMware, and then going on. Obviously, how I did the query by assets, I didn't get the information about the vulnerability. If I wanted the information about vulnerability, I could, for example, go in here, select that, and export to CSV. It would be, then it would give me info about the vulnerability itself, as you can see in here. Okay, so something for we end is to talk about the projects. So what is a project? The project is how we're gonna measure if the vulnerability remediation it's being done on your environment. And you can use the same query that we have created and saved to a remediation project. So let me just make this let's go to this. So if you see in here, I have the vulnerability, title contains Java. So I want to create a project about that. I can just go in here and create a project itself. Or if I just want a specific vulnerability, let's get this one, for example. I could, just filter by this VID. Then I would have a data just by this VID. I'm not going to save. If I wanted, I could, or I could just add this specific VID and filter by a specific site, group, operating system, anything that it's useful for your environment. So let's go to the remediation projects. Again, I don't have any remediation project at the moment. So I'm going to create a project. I'm going to give a name. So I'm just going to paste that vulnerability. In here, I could type remediate vulnerability. You could give a description. I have two options in here, static and dynamic. Static, if you have 10 assets vulnerable for this specific CV now, it will just have those specific 10 assets. Dynamic means that if you have 10 today, but tomorrow you have 20, all those assets will populate automatically to the project. I prefer dynamic. So the project scope, it's what you're gonna look into. I could load the specific queries that you created and save, or I can create a one and use the same type of query language. So I'm gonna go to CV ID and apply. And this automatically showing me that we have one asset that has this vulnerability. So save and continue, assign. Who can see this project? It's everybody, just me. I just have one user, that's myself. But in your environment, you could assign to the respective asset owners. The date, so this is important. So it's when I think this, the time that my team will have to fix this vulnerability. So let's say until the end of March. Or I could just select never expire. Important thing is when the project expires, even if you still have vulnerabilities and you still keep remediating them, they will stop to work because you have finished your project. And that result, the end result, is the result that you have achieved on those, for example, 30 days that you had to do this project. So query naming, automatically, when you create a project, it creates a query, and we can just save and complete. Obviously, how is a project with just one vulnerability and one asset, and my database is very small, I just have 14 assets, it will populate much faster. As you can see, it's still even in 25%. On your environment, it might take a little bit longer. So let's just wait. And another way to understand more about the vulnerability itself is you can just paste the CVE on the magnifier glass, and then you have the vulnerabilities. And you can see here that I have one instance, that's the Java, for this Java vulnerabilities. I can click in here and I can read, I have the links, and I have the remediation. I could also export from here. That would give me the proof. So the proof is that this vulnerability can be, this vulnerable version can be found on this path. So let's go back to the remediation project and see if it has populated already for you guys have an overview. So I'm going to click in here Yes, so the project will usually show the solution rather than the vulnerability itself. So click on them, then you have those tabs in here. So the first is give an overview. The second one, the solution, what you're supposed to do. The third one, if you have like an automated ticket system, some integrations. The assets that are vulnerable. Again, if you have 10 assets in here, you have already upgraded to the latest version, and you have rescanned those assets, you would see assets in remediated, and the rest of the assets that hasn't been fixed. They haven't been fixed. And the overview about the vulnerability as well. So this is a great tool that you guys should be using often, because it's easier to keep track. So for example, I can see the progress, and I can know that my team is actually doing the job that they're supposed to do. You just keep in mind that the vulnerability remediated will populate just after we scan the assets. Only if you have an agent running, then there is no need, because it's reassessment. But I think that's all for today. Thanks so much, and have a good day.